Hey, what's up, leaders? I got a really exciting interview here with Ted Morse. He is a retired Dearborn police officer. He was a chaplain, a canine officer. He's a pastor. He teaches at colleges. I think he even has a radio show. You're really going to enjoy this. I will see you on the interview. So, hey, everybody. We're excited to have our first guest speaker here. And my first question is, what is your actual name? Because I have a interesting story. I call this gentleman here Ted. And I'm a fireman. I was working in the city of Pontiac, and I was talking to another canine officer. He was a Dearborn police officer for how many years?
26 and a half.
26 and a half years. And they said, yeah, we were doing some training with some local departments from Dearborn. And all. I'm like, oh, you worked with Dearborn? I'm like, so you know Ted? They're like, no, no, I don't know Ted. I'm like, no, really tall guy, like 7 foot tall. His dog is named after like a Klingon or something. I couldn't remember. They're like, oh, you mean Gordon? I'm like, no, Ted, really tall. He's really tall. His dog speaks Klingon. I'm like, no, it's Ted. Like, I know his wife. His wife calls him Ted. I'm like, there's no way there can be another 6 foot. How tall are you?
6'8".
6'8" guy with a dog that speaks Klingon. And come to find out, at work, you're Gordon. And yeah. I know you as Ted. What is your name?
My real name is Gordon.
Gotcha. Okay.
So growing up, my mom didn't think Gordon was like, it fit a little kid, I guess. So I was named after my grandpa.
Gotcha.
And so she called me Ted, which isn't even my middle name. My middle name's Edward.
She just picked one out of the blue.
Yeah. And I said, Mom, why wouldn't you call me Ed? I was named after my godfather, who was Ed Valentine.
Right.
Why wouldn't you name me Ed? Right. And she's like, well, Ted Kennedy's name is Edward. Well, thanks for comparing me to a drunk liberal murderer.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's logical. So yeah. Today, what would you like me to call you?
Oh, I don't care. You can tell me what you're used to calling.
I'll go with Ted then.
Yeah.
So Ted, you were a police officer for 26 and a half years. Do you know how many days? It sounds like you were counting them
down. I don't know exactly how many days. And actually, I wasn't one of those guys that was like, get me out of here.
Gotcha.
I was trying to get a job teaching before I retired.
Right.
But we were coming up on a contract change that was going to really cost me a fortune in healthcare if I didn't retire. So it kind of
see that a lot.
Forced me out. Yeah.
And just tell the guys in general what you do, what you currently do, what you did in the police department. As I mentioned, you were canine, but there's some other things that you were up to. What did you do?
I spent the vast majority of my career in patrol. Obviously, and then canine I was in for the 26 years, 17 of it was in canine. So I worked 2 dogs. Deacon was my first, and Worf.
Deacon.
He's right next to me right now. So canine, that was always my dream. I became a Christian at age 15, and I knew immediately up until that time. Do you know what I was gonna do? What I wanted?
Basketball player, because you're 6'8".
No. That's what everyone assumed. I actually preferred football.
Okay.
I played football for Dearborn.
Okay.
But no, I wanted to be a stuntman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You've been a terrible stuntman being that big, because no other actors are 6'8".
Right. Well, I was up as prior to 15, so
yeah,
there's not a whole lot of actors I would have been able to fill in for. Right. But the second I became a Christian, you're going to be a cop with a dog. And I just knew that that's the way it was going to be. So I spent most of my career in patrol. I did some executive protection for our mayor.
Okay.
I got asked a lot, what do you want to promote or anything like that? Get, work your way up the chain of command. And canine was my promotion. That's what I wanted to do. And I would have had to give up the dog if I wanted to get to sergeant, lieutenant, and on up. So nope.
You retired as a patrolman?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I see a lot of people, like I'm in the fire service, and I see some people promote because they feel they have to.
Right.
Not because it's just, I've been here for 10 years, I should become a lieutenant. And sometimes they're the worst officers we have, just because either they want to make more money, they want the responsibility, but they don't want to take the learning, or they really are meant to be firefighters and not go do it, because that's a job. Like, that's a really important job to get good at, and it's good to be there once you figure it out. Like, I'm a captain right now, and if I can get to the Pontiac district, I probably won't promote for another 10 or 15 years, because that's where I want to be. I want to be a captain in the Pontiac district. I totally get getting where you want to be and then staying there.
So we're going to talk a little bit about, working in a very carnal atmosphere and keeping your morals, keeping your beliefs. Before I do that, I need to ask you another question. And I get this question every now and then. I get it asked two ways. One is, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? And I hate that question. Do you ever get that question?
Oh, all the time.
I'm like, you don't want to know. Like that, the story that I would tell you will ruin any party. It will bring everybody down. So I never tell my worst story ever. What's the weirdest thing you ever saw?
The weirdest thing. Well, the weirdest is probably going to be one of the, well, it wouldn't be the worst thing. It'd be the grossest thing. To me, the worst things are going into a home where there's evil there. You have
Yeah,
a dad who's beating his wife, and the wife's been so beaten down, she thinks she deserves it. I had a woman she's dead now. She ended up dying at the hands of her husband. But when I arrested him, she jumped on my back and started fighting me.
yeah,
And then the very next day was coming in to bond him out.
it's crazy.
So that to me is horrible stuff. But the I think would be the grossest thing would be a guy got hit by a train, and it was weird to me because it didn't look real. Every bone in his body was broken, so it actually just looked almost like, did you see what was it, Men in Black,
Yes.
where the guy put the guy was basically a suit for the alien.
Yeah.
It was like that. It was like a human suit, but it was a real person, but it didn't look real. It looked like something you'd buy at a costume store. It was just very odd. And
Yeah, a very strange thing.
but again, people ask, and they don't know. They don't know what you and I see.
Yeah.
So to them, it's, ooh, wow, and to us, it's like, that was.
Yeah, there's a few things that in my head I'm like, no one ever needs to see that or smell it.
Yep. And being the chaplain, well, being a cop and the chaplain for the department, I dealt with death a lot.
Right.
I was the one that was having to go there and tell people their kids had died,
Right.
or a wife had died, or something like that. So that go ahead.
I'll say you said you started as a chaplain in year 4 of your career.
Yeah. Yep.
So a real long time. That was probably kind of before critical incident stress debriefing, right? That wasn't totally like, that was like the beginning of.
Only a couple years within being chaplain, probably for 3 years.
Right.
I went and got trained as critical incident debriefing.
Right.
And then, as is typical with a lot of government entities, it never went anywhere.
Right.
So guys who were going through a rough time, they knew they could come and talk to me.
Right.
But we didn't have any formal setup. Like, actually, just before I retired, we officially started a team trained in critical incident stress debriefing, and they let me stay on it. So I'm still on it now.
I think we have a chaplain, and the only reason guys talk to him is because he was a retired battalion chief.
Yep.
Because there's another one, nobody talks to him. Or it's a female. Nobody talks to her. They don't relate. She can't understand. And so when we want to talk to somebody, you guys do, let's go talk to Chaplain Rayner.
Yeah, and it's extremely rare. Like, I went to a lot of chaplain training.
Right.
Vast majority of chaplains aren't cops or firefighters. They're, ministers.
Right.
I did hire, once I got made chaplain, I got in charge of the unit and got rid of the riffraff chaplains and I'm also assistant pastor of a church in Detroit.
Right.
So I hired my senior pastor as one of our chaplains, and he taught race relations classes to us at the department. And the guys just loved him because he was the first one that didn't come in and call us all racists and stuff like that. He talked to us.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
So, experience in this career, you're obviously around bad guys. It's your job is to go find the bad guys. And then I always kind of joke that firemen and probably cops are in the same way, that there's only a fine line between them potentially being a bad guy. Like, they're on our general personality is to be extreme. And some guys I work with have done really bad things. Like, growing up, they were in trouble and into drugs and all these things. And they change, but they bring some of that to work. How, obviously as a Christian and as a man of integrity, how did you manage to walk that line between not being totally separate where no one would ever talk to you, but still being keeping your morals, keeping your standards in a world, in an environment that wasn't conducive to that?
Well, I'll tell a story you and I were just talking about, because it did start to affect me when I was in my youth, in the first few years on the department. Um, I always taught my daughter, you are who you hang with. Well, I'm hanging around cops and I'm hanging around bad guys. And who swears more than cops and bad guys? Nobody. So I wasn't like, turning into a sailor or anything, but obviously I would swear some, because when I got made chaplain in '97, I had a partner at the time. And our first time in the car together, after me getting, they announced to the whole department that I was the chaplain now. He looked at me as we're driving down the street and he says, "So chaplain, huh?" And I said, "Yep." And he goes, "That's weird. I didn't think you were a Christian because I've heard you swear before." And I wanted to crawl under that seat, my 6'8" frame, just try and fit under that seat, because I felt horrible. And from that point on, I was like, okay, people are watching me,
For sure.
and I need to square myself away. And that's what really did it for me. I didn't want anybody to, and it's not a holier than thou.
Right.
There was one other time that I swore after that. And it's funny how people will react to it. I was looking for a bad guy in a house, and I know he was in there, but he wouldn't come out.
Right.
And I'm walking down the steps leading from his like a back deck. And I'm coming down the steps, and there's all these branches overgrown, and I'm putting my head down like this to get under them, and just whacked my head, like go to the hospital, whacked my head on a gas meter, not a gas meter, but an electric meter sticking out of the side house, the big glass thing over it. Sliced my head open, huge welt. I hit myself, and I said a bad word, and the guy that was with me knew I was a Christian. He fell on the floor laughing. He thought it was so funny. You swore, you swore. And he always loved bringing that up, and I don't try to pretend to be perfect, but for years he would bring that up in a ribbing way. So, but it does affect you.
Right.
But I paid close attention to the fact that people know, obviously I was very vocal about my Christianity, and then being a minister.
Right.
So that helped me be very cognizant of the fact that people were watching me.
Right. How do you think that affected your, I don't know if the relationship is not as right word, but your interaction with bad guys, with criminals that were, some were, evil's a tough word, but they were committing sin. And it's like a guy that would hit a kid. I had a guy put his cigarettes out on a kid. I'm thankful I wasn't a police officer. I think I would have done something bad. Like, I had anger as I'm trying to take care of this little kid who's no longer breathing. Like, how did you, being a Christian, help that situation? And not everybody's going to be in a situation where they deal with criminals, but we all as men deal with situations where we deal with jerks. How do you think being a Christian, or even a man of integrity, or whatever you want to call it, helped?
I think being, whether you're a Christian or a man of, I'll just say being more a Christian,
right,
that helped me in and of itself. And what I mean by that is, when I'd see the evil that I saw in my career all those years, over a quarter of a century, I know where it's coming from. I know why people are evil. So it's a lot easier for me to not only recognize it, but recognize the source of it and understand why it's there, and that I needed to do whatever I could, not only to flee from it in a sense that I didn't do it myself,
right,
but also one of the things I really taught my fellow officers was that our job was ordained by God. We have our own verse in the Bible. And so when you see that evil, it's our job to go out there and get that evil.
Right.
So that's how, when I'd see it, it just made me want to go get it. But as far as taking it too far, maybe, and punch a guy in the face, I guess I always just thought back to, if I do that illegitimately, some guys I got to punch in the face because they were fighting me. So you got to.
Right.
In fact, I got mad at I was training a new guy. I love training new people because I want to train them to be kind of like how I dealt with, when I dealt with bad guys.
Right.
I always followed what I called the roadhouse mentality in police work. which is from the movie Roadhouse. Patrick Swayze told his bouncers, be nice until it's time to not be nice. And so I always tried to have that attitude with criminals.
Right.
I'm going to be nice and respectful to you until you make it so that I can't be, and I got to go hands on, and I got to take you into custody, whatever I have to do.
Right.
You're going to be the one that makes me do that. Up until that point, I'm just going to be nice.
Yeah, I just read a book about General Mattis, the head of the Marines, and then the Secretary of Defense. And his statement was, "No better friend, no worse enemy," which I think is probably really good. Like, up until the point you have to be tough, don't be tough. Be a good person.
And some of the times people are going through things in their life and making bad decisions. And as we're seeing now in our current events going on in the world,
Right.
Specifically George Floyd,
Right.
bad decisions get made.
Yeah.
And you're going to suffer for that when you do that, whether you're a cop or you're not a cop.
Right.
Um,
that's definitely a hard situation with, like, have you put yourself in that situation? You're the guy standing there while your partner's got their foot on someone's neck. And that could be, obviously in the George Floyd case, that was a real event, but we all experience times where our coworkers are maybe doing things unethical, immoral. And it's that weird, like, this is my boy. This is I don't want to be the narc or whatever it is, but I also want to be a man of integrity. How do you think, I put myself in that situation. We talked about it sitting around the kitchen table. Hey, what do you do if we're on a call and one of our cops has got his knee on a guy? Do you say something? Do you not? Like, how do you think you'd handle that?
I would like to think, and hindsight's always 2020, as
Sure.
they say, that I would have dragged him off of George Floyd if I had to. Now, if I had 2 days on the job, or 4 days, I think it was, as those other new guys did, I don't know. I think back to how naive I was at the beginning. I would have wondered if I had the right to do that back then. Now, you gain experience, and no, nobody should be doing that to another human being.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm at my 20-year mark in my career, and I think right now I wouldn't have a problem in the world walking over, but I'm in a position of authority, and I do that consistently all day long. I make small decisions. But yeah, if I got 4 or 5 years on, dude, I guess he knows what he's doing. I've never seen that technique of the 8-minute knee.
After the person's compliant.
Yeah, but so that's.
Fortunately, I was very blessed to work with mostly good people. And I have seen instances where when there's a big melee going on and other officers run in and go, hey, that's enough. And let's end this.
Right.
And then, cameras really help that too.
Right.
Cameras help police the police, because we always just assume that everything we're doing is being recorded anyway.
Now, is that something you guys train with now? Because we've probably, for the past 10 years, we record every fire we go to at least. Mm-hmm. And it's hugely helpful. Is that something you guys have done?
Oh, absolutely. We've got them in our cars, and we have body cams too.
And you go back for training, hey, this is the call, it went bad or went good?
Yeah, usually any serious run, a good sergeant, a good team sergeant, like the one I retired under, was fantastic. We would all debrief the incident and talk about, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? How can we do the next one better?
Did you guys use a system that maybe some of the guys that are watching this could follow, as far as, we call it after action review? I don't know if you use the same terminology, but it's the person putting it on takes responsibility for everything. I did this good. If I'm the battalion chief or the captain that day, this is what I did good. This is what I did bad. I take responsibility for that. This is how I could prove, and then give it away. Do you guys have a system that guys could use in their day-to-day life to kind of analyze decisions they made and go back over and get better?
No, it was never really anything formal. I think our SWAT, anytime they're called out and would do something, they actually take place in a formal debriefing. Ours was just, every day we have roll call.
Right.
And so, because usually when we're battling out in the streets, we don't have time to sit around and talk about it until the next day. So the next day we all meet in roll call, and that's what it's for. You're told what you're going to do for the day, and then, okay, hey, yesterday at this barricaded gunman.
Right.
Any thoughts and ideas about how it went down, how we reacted. So it's not anything formal, but it's a good idea of like what we're doing here in this month of July. I really like it, where at the beginning of the day, this is what we're going to do for the day, and then at the end of the day, I'm like last night, I was thinking, okay, what didn't I get done out of the things that I planned to do today? What didn't I get done? Um, so you could kind of work it into something like that. How did I handle some lady screaming at me at the store yesterday or
Right.
earlier today? How could I have handled that better?
Yeah. Do you, when you were at work, did you have a list of priorities that this is, because for me, we deal with priorities of work at every event we go to. For instance, in the fire service, the first thing you worry about is rescuing people at a house fire. Is there someone that can be rescued? Once you can take that off the table, the mom's outside, all my kids are outside, then you move down to the next level. Did you have something like that in the police service where you're always worried about this until you're not, then you move your way down? And do you think that you could relay that into your life as far as what am I going to always attempt to do, always be kind, always be caring, whatever the thing is? Did you guys have anything like that in the police service?
Nothing that was really like written down. It was just a matter of like policing. When I mentioned before, I love training new guys, new officers. That was why, because I'd train them to do what I would do, and hope that they would continue it on. So if I'm going to a run, no matter what the run is, unfortunately for police, it's the nature of the game. My first and foremost concern, no matter what the run is someone going to try and kill me?
Yeah.
And it's not being paranoid. It's
No, that's,
people try to kill us. There's just a Toledo, Ohio cop got murdered
yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and I don't see any Hollywood types sending money to pay for the funeral or anything like that.
No,
But
it's weird.
I digress.
Yeah.
But so I do, for everything, there is a plan of action, and it's funny. So like the first thing showing up, say it's a family trouble.
Mhm.
What, let's say it's not a family trouble. Let's just say it's a noise complaint. Somebody called me to their house for a noise complaint. I walk up to the door and I don't stand directly in front of the door, because that's how cops get killed. So I always stand off to the side. So it's funny when I go to like my brother's house, I go up to his door and I stand off to the side. My brother's not going to kill me,
Right.
but I want to be habitual in the things that I do that are important.
Yeah.
So me protecting my life is important. So I am always I still do. I'm retired. I still walk up and don't stand right in front of the door.
No, I think having that, I think what you said is being habitual with the things that are important is what makes the difference between people who are successful and unsuccessful. If you're random throughout the day, like for me, exercise is habitual. I know that in order to live a healthy life, I need to work out a couple days a week, and it's a habit. When I'm at work at 3 o'clock every day, I go into the gym. That's huge. And for you and me, there's some things like I check my air tank out every single morning, even though in my 20-year career, I've only had it not function 2 or 3 times, like when I'm checking it out, maybe 3 times ever where something wasn't right. But that's the time that I would have gone into a burning building and it failed. Like that's important. I think as men, we need to figure out what our priorities are and make it habitual. One of the things with this challenge, like, are you spending at least 30 minutes of quality time with your wife? Like, that's not a lot, but if it's not a habit, it's easy to just coexist. I'm in the stage of lots of little kids, and it's just busy, man. My kids are at my sister's house with my wife, and I'm at my house. And the reason is because I couldn't do this. It would be too loud. So having some time to do the things habitually is one of the reasons I set those things in motion. And it's not going to kill me not to have quality time with my wife, but it would kill our relationship. I think that's a really, really good habit to get into. Outside of work, do you have any habitual things that you think have made you successful?
Well, one of the things talking about that, especially in regards to wives, I obviously being a Christian, I have to give full credit to God because one, I married a divorced woman, so the chance of her and I getting divorced was high.
Right.
He brought a child into the picture. So that's another knock up the percentage chance for us to get divorced. And then me being a cop
Right.
shoots the percentage way up. So the fact we've been married for 21 years is just an absolute miracle that I give God full credit for. But there are certain things that we as men have to put as, how shall I put this, as kind of a protective hedge to keep you from doing things you shouldn't be doing. Like, for instance, I counsel people being a minister.
Right.
So like there's one instance I think of, a friend of mine was having trouble with his wife and they were at odds with each other. She was confiding in a man at work. And so when I was counseling them, among the things I told them was I said to her, her husband stepped out of the room where they had a finished basement, but he was gone, but we were not in an enclosed room together. It's something I don't do with a woman I'm not married to.
Right.
So I told her, I said, look, you and I will never have any closed door meeting counseling sessions. And this is why I want you to stop confiding with this man at your work, because you're forming a bond with him while your marriage is struggling.
Right.
And that's going to end bad. And
Right.
so I don't put myself in that situation. And they end up getting divorced and she married that guy. So, and I've seen that happen
Right.
countless times. So I try to put things in my path. I don't try to have the attitude of, I'm so good, I would never cheat on my wife.
Right.
Instead, I try to say, well, better men than I have gone down that road.
Sure.
So I want to put things in my path to make sure I don't go down that road.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. There's a book called Atomic Habits, and it's about the psychology of creating habits. And one of the, if I'm remembering the right book, is to make things that you want to do automatic. Like if you want to save money, don't rely on willpower and motivation to go into your bank and send money to your savings account. Make it automatic. Like
Right.
if you want to be a giver and give to your church, have your bank on the 15th of the month send your tithing to church. Just do it. Like have it, if it's automatic, you'll do it, because I find that I get real motivated to do some things, but that goes away. like if I had to rely on motivation to be healthy and in shape, I would weigh 400 pounds. I maintain that, but I've made some things habitual. I wish I could make working out automatic where my body just does it, but it doesn't. But I've made that habit. Yeah, I could be sleeping and the muscles would just be working. Eventually, we'll just take a pill and we'll get there. But yeah, I think that's really important that, hey, if this is important, it's got to be automatic, because you will not have willpower at certain times in your life. Especially, like I come home, I'm exhausted. Like I'm tired, long physical day, and it's hard to do certain things. So I think having those habitual habits that, I think that's redundant, but habits in your life are really important.
Yeah, and that goes right back to like when I go up to somebody's door, I don't think, oh, I need to stand off to the side. I just do it.
Yeah, you wouldn't even.
Right. I just veer off. It's, in the police world, we call it muscle memory.
Right.
Well, I can strip my whole gun apart blindfolded and put it back together.
Right.
The way I'll block a punch, I've done it so many times, my muscles almost do it automatically.
Right. Yeah, and I think if we can get that way in our daily life with things that are important, it's a lot easier to be successful. It's a lot less mental, what do I got to do? Learning that new habit or that new thing is hard until it's not. Like if you ask me to turn my air tank on, like I'm the same way, instantaneous. I just close my eyes and I can operate it with gloves on, and it's 500 degrees. I have it. So I think that's important for the guys watching this. If there's something you want to do and it's important to you, make it to a point where you don't have to think about it and you'll never have to worry about it again. It just happens. I think that's awesome. Well, this was all really good. I know we're doing these mini challenges. And so I've got a question for you, and I know this will lead into what our mini challenge is, so we can earn a point. Is, do you have any resources for the guys that you think would be important for them to read or go see? And then that will lead us to the mini challenge that you've developed for us.
One of the things I like, I I'm probably reading 5 books right now. I'm dumb. I'll read them all at the same time because I want to learn different things. So
Right.
like right now I'm preparing a class for the end of the month. So I'm reading a book on that. My next class I'm going to prepare to teach is on atheism. So I'm reading a book on that. And then obviously I'm reading the Bible all the time, but I'm reading a book on General Lee from the Civil War, because he's so ostracized. Everybody says he's the most horrible human being, but I'd heard he was actually anti-slavery. So I'm like, I'm gonna read a book on him and
Right.
see if that was true or not. So I read a lot. One of the things I recommend as men, someone that sets good goals and really goes 110% at it. I don't know if you ever read the book called Seal of God, and it's SEAL, all caps. It's a Navy SEAL who was a Christian.
Gotcha.
And he talks about not only the struggles of what it took because he knew he wanted to be a SEAL,
Right.
but then becoming a Christian and having to deal with being totally different from all the guys he was around too, and really having to stand up, not against that so much, but to be able to convince the guys that, hey, I'm still one of you. I can't go out to the bar and get hammered, But it's a really, really motivational book, the Seal of God. Not what I came up with for the challenge, but a great book. I think his name's Chad Williams.
Right. I'll link that in the description so you guys can see that. I'm definitely. I've heard the saying that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers.
Yeah.
Some people just read and that's cool, but if you want to be a leader, I think you have to read, because you don't have enough life to get all the information you need to be good at what the people that you're leading. Like you can go 20 years, raise your kids for 20 years, and at the end you'll be a good dad. But you need to be a good dad at either 2, either 5. Like you don't want to mess them up and then just be a good, dad to your grandkids.
Yeah, right. Or telling your kids, hey, sorry about.
Yeah, I really messed you up. That's
Yeah.
not good. Do you use Audible? Do you ever listen to books?
You're gonna probably say bad things about me, but I cannot stand reading either on the computer or on a tablet.
No. Do you listen?
No, I don't do that either. I've got to have.
No, I don't like reading on my tablet, but I listen to books. I listen to 1 book a month, every month.
Really?
Yeah, it's a $15 subscription, and it's pretty much any book there is. And instead of listening to the radio to and from work, or when I'm working out, I listen to Audible books.
Huh. Yeah. See, so I had some books I set aside here. This is my book I'm preparing a class on tactical Christianity. And so I go through and I highlight, and then I'll go back and reread the book, the parts I highlighted that are important.
Good stuff.
So, yeah. So
what is the challenge that you've figured out for us?
So part of the reason I'm going to teach a class on tactical Christianity is because I don't think Christians can defend their faith to save their life. And it's sad because there's so many evidences for it. This is what I went to school for, was teaching people how to defend their faith. So many Christians don't tell other people about Christianity because they're afraid of somebody saying something like, well, I don't believe in a God. And man, what do I say to that? So it's they don't know what to answer. Right. So I'm big on getting Christians to do the opposite, be able to defend their faith. So my challenge was to read this. I read this book, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, well into being a Christian. This was probably read this for the first time maybe 7 years ago or so. And great book. He was a journalist. And I think he went to Yale Law School. He was very well educated. He was an atheist and he was a drunk. And his wife became a Christian. And he decided, well, I'm going to investigate Christianity and prove it wrong so that he could shut his wife up, essentially. Right. And he ends up becoming a Christian.
That's how we do most things, right?
Yep. So I figured during this month, it's an easy read. It's not a big book or anything like that. I always think that the best thing we as men can do is something that'll strengthen our faith. And that book like I said, I read it well into my, I've been a pastor for 13 years prior to reading that. So, and it still strengthened my faith. So I figure, I don't know what kind of point value you want to give it.
Do you think they can read it in 2 weeks?
Yeah, let me see how many pages it is. Like I said, it's a quick and very interesting read, because what he does is some of the things he investigated,
Right.
he'll tell you the story about it and then tie it into what he's talking about. So it's fascinating stuff. It's only like 250 pages. I think that
We'll do, you can get 3 points. If you read the book, you can earn 3 points towards earning your title as the husband, father later. So.
that stinks. So do I have to reread it?
No, you can, and you can listen. I will put a link for Audible. So
good idea.
To it, and then you don't need that. You can just go for it. You could exercise, go for an hour-long run, get 2 points for that. Listen to it, get 3 points. It'd be too easy.
Too easy. We're making it too easy.
Making it too easy. Ted, is there anything else you'd like to tell the guys?
Don't be ashamed to be a man. I know our current society, they're really pushing down men. I call it the feminization of men. In fact, I kind of probably take things a little bit too far. I refuse to wear pink. It's just something I do to boycott the feminization of men.
Right.
And don't be ashamed of your masculinity. I think, you and I talked earlier about the Gillette commercials and how they were portraying men as just these horrible human beings. I think masculinity is a good thing. I am convinced my wife does not know how to open a door, because we've been together, married 21 years, we've been together 23. She doesn't open a car door. I do it for her. It's not because she's weak.
No.
It's something I do to respect her. That's masculinity.
For
not
sure.
stuff that Hollywood or the media is portraying it as.
No,
So be proud of being men. Just be something that you should be proud of.
I think a man should be capable. Like I hear, and I've seen some of my friends like not know what their kids' birthdays are. I'm like, dude, that's not manly.
Yep.
You're so busy, you don't know when your kids were born.
Yeah.
Like you need to be a capable. I think a guy, like I don't do much laundry. That's Andrea's thing, but I know how to do it. Like
Yep.
I know how to do. I try to learn how to do everything. I want to be capable. That's manliness, is to be the provider, to be capable to do just about everything.
Yep.
So
and it's more than it's telling you, like yesterday it just jumped into my head. Angie came into the kitchen and she had a really pretty skirt and a pretty top on. I said, "Oh, you look really pretty." That's being a man.
yes.
Or like today, I was at church, meaning I was sitting right here. Our church still isn't open up yet. And she calls me and says, "There's a coyote in the backyard." I grab my gun. I go running out into the backyard, ready to take care of business.
Yeah.
All of that is being a man.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm
Your little
protecting
girl
my
hands you,
family, and I'm loving my family.
yeah, your little girl hands you a pretend phone. You answer it and you say, "Hi, how are you doing?" That's like it's being present. It's being capable. So I think that's awesome. So we will wrap this up. But if they want to get a hold of you, you are in the Facebook group. And is there any other? Are you on Twitter or Facebook or anything? Or guys?
I'm on Facebook
Cool.
too, and it's under Gordon Morse.
Gordon.
Ted, sorry.
Your name. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Ted, Gordon, whatever your name is.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.